Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Good afternoon and welcome to episode 22 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'll be joined by local legend Leon Searcy. Leon played right tackle in the NFL for 11 seasons, including 5 in Jacksonville, and he also won 3 national championships at the University of Miami. You can catch Leon on XL Primetime from 2 to 4 p.m. each weekday and on the fifth quarter after each Jaguars game on 1010 XL AM/92.5 FM. So I'm really excited to get Leon's expertise on the Jaguars' 2024 offensive and defensive lines today. But first, as we do every show, it's time for some Jaguars trivia. Brian Thomas Jr.'s 513 receiving yards ranks 5th among all NFL players this season. He's on pace for over 1,200 yards over a full 17-game season, which would shatter Jacksonville's rookie receiving record. Who currently holds the Jaguars' rookie record for receiving yards? Is it A, Justin Blackmon, B, Keelan Cole, C, Allen Hurns, or D, Laviska Shenault? Leon, you got a guess for this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with A-Rob.
No, it was
Allen Hurns. I'm gonna go with the Hurricane. Allen Hurns. Was Allen Hurns a Hurricane?
I don't remember. I just know that he was undrafted, but no.
I'm gonna go with Allen Hurns.
Correct answer is Justin Blackmon. He has the rookie record for receiving yards and receptions.
Nice.
I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but he did have a nice little start to his his Jaguars career, but obviously not nearly as good as Brian Thomas right now. But again, brought on Leon today to today's show to talk about the trenches for Jacksonville and what we've seen through the first 7 weeks of the NFL season for the Jaguars on the offensive and defensive lines. And so, Leon, I wanted to start by asking you specifically about Anton Harrison and what your thoughts on him were before he even got drafted by the Jaguars in the first round last year, and then just how you think he's developed over time, especially as a 21-year-old rookie last year who's switching over from the left side that he played at Oklahoma to going to the right side in Jacksonville. Because I know even though you played right tackle, I believe your whole career, maybe you switched a little bit in the NFL, but you definitely played both left tackle and right tackle at Miami. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Anton is tradition. He has transitioned well. He did play left tackle at Oklahoma, and it's really no difference because if you're a left tackle, you're protecting essentially the quarterback's blind side. If you're a right tackle, there's a blunt of the load that is impressed upon you to not only be a run blocker and a tempo setter, but someone who can also pass protect as well. You know, I was in a situation where I played right tackle and I was expected to be aggressive and get after people and be physical. But then I understood as well that Mark Brunell was left-handed, that I had to protect his blind side. You know, so that was double duty. But I think Anton Harrison, his rookie year, I think he played his best football, in my opinion, his rookie year. Now, early on this season, he struggled at times against faster guys because of his kick angles. And that's just stuff that's coachable, that you can work on in practice and that you need to work on in practice, that you got to understand that this is your craft and that you get very handsomely to play well. And I thought at times during the season, especially the Buffalo game and maybe the Texans game, he struggled a bit as far as guys that could get around the edge on him because his kick angles were short. But I think overall he's been solid. At times he tends to wither under the pressure of better defenders, and he's got to learn to elevate his play when he's going up against talent that's maybe as elite as he is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I think that's where we've seen him get beat up the most, especially like the biggest example is going back to week 2 of last year during his rookie season against Chris Jones, the Chiefs line an edge defender across from the 21-year-old rookie again, and he had a pretty tough day. But I think it's a good point that you made about how the issues with going against speed rushers is fixable with coaching, because I actually thought that Anton was a much better pass protector against speed rushers coming out of college. So I was especially just impressed last year by how good he was for the most part in terms of going against power rushers, because a lot of times you can break that up into speed rushers versus power rushers, versus a Trayvon Walker. But sometimes it's also similar for offensive tackles and at the other side, where some guys are a lot better at being kind of nimble and quick on their feet and picking up like those smaller guys as opposed to just being able to anchor super well and really be able to stand your ground against the Trayvon Walkers of the world. And so I thought that was an area that Anton impressed a lot last year as a young guy.
Well, here's my philosophy. When it came to guys I had to go up against back in the day, I never worried about what they did. That's why my craft, I wanted to make sure that I lived and died by my technique, that my technique was going to be flawless no matter if you were a bull rusher, if you were a speed rusher, if you were a double move guy, if you were a one-arm ball guy, if you were a hand slap guy. I was going to be consistent with how I blocked you. So that means that I practiced how I was going to play no matter who I went up against. Because it's not about what kind of tempo they set, it's what kind of tempo you set as an offensive lineman. And I tell a lot of these young offensive linemen, if you don't impose fear on defensive ends, then they do whatever the hell they want to do against you. That's why my punch was lethal, that you had to pay a price to come up and go up against me. That just was going to grab you or hold you. I was going to deliver a two-handed punch to your chest, to your side, to whatever I needed to do to slow you down. And I made sure that that punch was physical enough that the next time you thought about coming around a corner or coming inside, that you paid the price for whatever the decision you decide to make. And I think Anton is equipped with the feet and hands to utilize that kind of punch. He's just got to be a little bit more consistent with it.
Yeah, I think consistency is definitely a big thing just throughout the entire roster with how many young guys that they have developing. Like I know that's a big thing with defensive lineman Mason Smith as well. We'll get over to the defensive side, but I also wanted to ask about the left tackle situation in Jacksonville, especially with Cam Robinson leaving week 7 out only a couple snaps into the game with a concussion, and then Walker Little took his spot. And so what did you see from Walker Little when he stepped in for Robinson against the Patriots? And what do you think it could be a positional competition moving forward if Walker continues to play well?
Well, I think he played his best football. I mean, outside of maybe in 2022 down the stretch when he was playing left tackle, and the game he played against Khalil Mack where he shut him down and didn't give up any pressures towards him. I think Walker Little, he's going to make Cam Robinson expendable at the end of the season, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I don't think he's going to get elite money, but I think the Jaguars are going to make the decision that he's going to be the left tackle and that Anton Harrison is going to be the right tackle because, for one, he's cost efficient. For 2, he's young. And for 3, him and Anton Harrison can grow together. You know, they're young guys that essentially could be with your team for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that as far as cost efficient goes, I don't think he's going to command the $16 to $15 million that Cam Robinson gets. You'll probably be able to get him for maybe 12, 13, something like that. You know, I don't want to lowball him because, I mean, his agent's job to get as much as he can from him. But I think that the Jaguars would do themselves a service if they just kept if they kept Walker Little and Anton Harrison to be your bookends moving forward.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of fans are already looking ahead to the draft and all of the good offensive tackles that are there. But it makes a lot of sense to at least bring back one of your left tackles in Robinson or Little. I agree with you on the point with Little, but especially since you have the franchise tag available for next offseason. So to wrap up the offensive line talk, in terms of the running game, the Jaguars ranked 31st in success rate, just rushes last season. And this season they ranked 16th, which is a major jump to go to one of the worst running offenses in the league to league average. And so obviously there's not just one thing that made that change. But if you had to point to one thing, what do you think is the biggest difference between last year's run game versus this year's run game?
Well, I think there had to be a collective effort inside the locker room, inside the meeting room, inside the offensive line meeting room that they weren't going to tolerate the way they played last year. I mean, one thing about the offensive line, we hold a mantle on toughness. You know, we consider ourselves the toughest guys on the team. And you can't say that you're the toughest guys on the team when you're not converting on 3rd and short and 4th and short, and you're getting pushed back. So I think that collectively the offensive line had a meeting and said to themselves, frankly, enough's enough. We need to start playing and executing at a very high level and start being physical. And I saw that over the last couple of weeks, especially in the Patriots game. On that left side, Ezra Cleveland and Walker Little got it done. I mean, they were hip tossing guys, getting to the second level. Tank Bigsby was hitting the holes, accelerating through the holes. So that was a good thing. We need that kind of consistency throughout the offensive line, because down the stretch, these next 5 games, you're going to be playing them against defenses that play at a very elite level. And this offensive line is going to have to execute at an elite level if they're going to be able to compete with these guys in the next 5 weeks.
So I wanted to ask you about Doug Peterson's decision in the Week 7 game to go for a 4th and 1, which ended up failing. But if the Jags had kicked a field goal, they would have gone up by 3 scores and essentially just iced the game. But Doug Peterson was trying to ice that game by going for it on 4th and 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think the majority of people probably did not like the decision from Doug because just mathematically speaking, it was probably the wrong choice. But at the same time, I think from a player standpoint, it makes a lot of sense to go for it because Doug was just putting trust in his team and in his offensive linemen specifically, right? And so did you like that decision by Doug to go for it and to put that trust in his offensive line?
No, I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I did. I really did. Because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, just think about this, all right? You got a spot that you know how to get to, right? You know how, let's say a restaurant that you know how to get to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've driven there a couple of times or whatever, but guess what? You use your GPS to give you directions to get to the restaurant when you know you don't need it. Just common sense tells you that you know how to get to the restaurant, but then you still look it up on your GPS to find a way to get there. That's how Doug is. Just use damn common sense, Doug. Kick the field goal. You're up 3 possessions. And, I mean, the game is over, essentially over. I mean, you can't make those kind of decisions as a coach when you're already on the ropes and you're a 1-5 team. You got to start chalking up some wins before you start making those kind of decisions.
Yeah, that's totally a fair point about common sense, even if you don't want to give your guys a little bit of a boost motivation-wise. To flip over to the defensive line, I feel like the biggest talk for most of the season has been Eric Armstead, who was signed as a marquee free agent this offseason and was brought in to really shore up the whole unit. But he got a lot of snaps out on the edge, even though he had primarily been an interior defensive lineman for his 9 seasons played with the Niners. And so he ended up moving back a little bit more inside against the Patriots in Week 7. But what did you see from Armstead on the edge? And do you think that he should continue getting some reps out there, especially considering Jacksonville's depth behind Hines Allen and Walker? Or do you like him more as an inside guy only?
No, he's an inside rusher. I mean, the only reason why he's outside is because he's pulling rank. He's using his seniority so he doesn't have to play inside because he doesn't want that smoke inside. But when you put him inside against that right guard and he used that hand slap and got around him, that's when you can best utilize him, is when he's inside. Listen, the reason why Trent Baalke has history with him, but the reason why I thought that he was brought here is because last year when we played against the 49ers and he played inside of us, he terrorized us inside. He was almost essentially unblockable inside. So when we signed him, I said, okay, this guy knows how to get it done interiorly, and then mass majority of the season, outside of the Dolphins games, he's been outside. He's not an outside rusher. He's going to make more of a bang, more of an impact interiorly as a pass rusher because he got the size, he's got the length, and he's got the mobility to get around guards who aren't as quick and fast as he is.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why he wanted to try out playing on the edge more this season and towards the end of his career, because I would think that it was because of trying to get more pass rush production. But I feel like he's going to just continue to get more pass rush production.
I can tell you why. Because he's getting older and he doesn't want that smoke inside. He doesn't want those double teams. He don't want those guys banging on him inside. And you feel that once you've been in the league long enough, you think you could pull seniority over the younger guys and make them go outside, make them go inside and you go outside. I can tell you exactly what he's doing.
There you go. Well, I can't say I blame him. Must be, I mean, you know what it's like to play in the league for 10 plus years. Let's talk about Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker. Obviously, Walker has had, on paper, the better season of the two. He's top 10 in sacks right now, but Hines Allen is actually above him in terms of pressures and quarterback knockdowns. And so I think they're both having pretty solid seasons. But what have you seen from them this year, especially compared to last year, as they both just develop into pass rushers?
Well, Well, I predicted before the season started that Trayvon Walker will probably have a better year than Josh Allen. Not because he's motivated, first of all, by the contract that he signed. You know, anytime, and I said this last year, that when Josh Allen had all those sacks last year, that would motivate Trayvon Walker, because on the other side of you got somebody that's eating, and if you're not eating, you become hungry. I mean, what kept me as a profound player on my right side is that I had Baselli on the left side, and we were teammates, but we was also competitors. And the last thing I was going to do is let Bo outshine me. So that's what kept my game on point. So Trayvon Walker is probably thinking the same thing. He got all the attention. Josh Allen got all the attention last year, 17 and a half sacks, Pro Bowl, new contract. So Trayvon Walker, you know, wants a little taste of what he's been eating now. So that's why he's elevated his game, which is always good. You never want to be comfortable in this league. You always want to be ascending in some capacity. And you got to use any competitive edge you can as a player. And if it's your teammate shining and you want to shine above them, so be it.
Now on to Mason Smith. He was inactive this past week and was inactive a few weeks ago, even despite Jacksonville trading defensive tackle Roy Robertson-Harris to the Seahawks a week or two ago. Do you think it's a big deal that he's inactive at this point? I mean, he's still coming off a major knee injury, and he is a second-round rookie. And so are you looking into it a lot, or do you think –
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a second-round pick, and you're a healthy scratch. That lets me know one or two things is going on. One, they don't trust you. Or two, you're not getting it done in practice enough to where they feel they could put you on the field and you could be productive. So that's an indictment on the player. If this late in the season and you're a second-round pick and you're a healthy scratch, those two factor in. They don't trust you, or you're not putting forth the effort in practice to where they feel that they can put you in the game and you'll be productive. So that's an indictment on the player himself, that he's a healthy scratch this late in the season.
Okay, well, we've hit on a lot of names so far. Are there any other ones that we haven't mentioned so far that have caught your eye, either good or bad, on either side of the ball for the trenches for the Jags this year?
Well, I mean, guys in the trenches, I mean, Ezra Cleveland is playing well. He had a great game last week, had an outstanding game. Him and Walker Little had an outstanding game. Let me see. Listen, Evan Ingram coming back. I mean, that's not in the trenches, but I got to say Evan Ingram coming back definitely helps this offense. I think Vontrell Miller, I mean, he's a seek and go get it guy. So he's been playing well. It's good that we got Tyson Campbell back, although he's got to make that interception. You can't be dropping interceptions. That ball didn't have nothing to do with your hamstring, so your hands ain't hurting. So you got to make that catch. But that's it. You know, I just think this team right now has to understand that their level of execution and intensity has to be ramped up these next 5 weeks. Their level of play beating the Patriots won't beat any of these 5 teams that we got to play moving forward. And here's why I understand that. When I was a Jaguar, we were in a division where we had to play the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Titans. And me and Bo Baselli understood that our intensity and our level of execution in practice had to be ramped up in order to meet the level of competition that we had to play when we had to play those teams. So this team has to understand these next 5 weeks, however they've been playing, is not good enough. They got to rev it up in practice, the intensity level, the execution level, if they're going to have a chance against these 5 teams, because these 5 teams are right now thinking playoffs. And so they're looking, they're pole positioning themselves for the playoffs. So the Jaguars have to understand that these next 5 games are going to be playoff level intensity, and they've got to be able to match it or they're going to be overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, that was Leon Searcy, former NFL and Jaguars great. Leon, thanks you so much for the time and for sharing your insight on Jacksonville's trenches so far this year.
Appreciate it, Gus.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
All right, before we get to our top 5 quotes section, we are going to take a quick ad break.
Thanks for listening to the Duval Rundown, brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines.
Alrighty, let's get to some quotes. This first one comes from Trevor Sikkema of PFF during the PFF Week 7 recap show on YouTube, talking about Jaguars rookie cornerback Jarian Jones. He pronounces it Jarian, but it is Jarian. Here we go.
Players who was on the top 5 list for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the rookie is playing well. I was really impressed with him throughout the draft season when I got to see him in person, specifically at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And man, I thought he played really well. 86.2 coverage grade in this game, 36 coverage snaps. He was targeted 7 times, did give up 5 catches for 34 yards, but had 2 forced incompletions as well. They targeted him quite a bit. It was an active day for Jones, but more often than not, he was the one who was winning some of those reps. And so I think that's what we've been looking for, right? I think when Tyson Campbell was out specifically, we were wondering, hey, who else in the secondary is really going to step up for this group? And even with Tyson Campbell out there, Jarian Jones being able to get into this lineup, I think is pretty huge.
So Jarian Jones started at nickel on Sunday with Darnell Savage moving to the starting strong safety spot over Antonio Johnson. And so it was a good shout out by Trevor, I thought, because almost similar to Monteric Brown at some points this season, Jarian Jones did allow a decent amount of targets and receptions, but with that considered, he still played well and allowed minimal yardage. And you could really see, for anyone who hasn't really paid attention to Jacksonville's rookie class so far this year, Jarian definitely has that dog in him and that tenacity that Ryan Nielsen and everyone else in Jacksonville is looking for from the Jaguars in general, but especially the defensive side of the ball when they want to be aggressive and stout. And so, yeah, nice. I believe it was actually with Tyson now, it might not have been his first career start, but either way, nice performance from Jarian Jones on Sunday. This next quote is from Doug Peterson via Jaguars YouTube, talking about advice to international pathway players.
Players out there, you see the game is growing. We have another record today. You see the international game is growing. As a head coach, you have some small flights of players out there that want to make it to the big league.
You know, don't ever. You can't. Don't let people say you can't do anything, right? You got to believe in yourself. Give yourself an opportunity. Be seen. And your work ethic is gonna go a long way. A lot of these players in this locker room, that's how they grew up, right? They grew up with an opportunity to play this game as a young player. But obviously now, with the international pathway, there's more opportunities for players to find themselves on NFL rosters, and we have to continue to develop the sport, I think, globally, because it just makes us a stronger league overall.
I thought that was a pretty cool quote from Peterson, because he was asked to give his insight from a perspective of an NFL head coach, but I think he was really giving his perspective as a former undrafted NFL player who kind of had to go through multiple practice squads, play on multiple teams in order to make it as an NFL player. And so, again, just thought that was a cool response from Doug in London. Next quote comes from Tank Bigsby after Jacksonville's Week 7 win via Jaguars YouTube.
I feel like this is a time of adversity, and adversity shows real character. And it shows who you can be and who you are. And I feel like today showed what this team can be when our back's against the wall and when we're going through something. So let's keep going.
I just thought that was a bar. That's it. Number 2 quote comes from Parker Washington after the game.
Get a punt return. I was telling some of the players, some of the coaches, I was like, I just want one. I just want one career punt return touchdown, or just any return touchdown. And it was just a special moment. And even before the game, I watched a little bit of Deshaun Jackson. He's one of my favorite players. So it just inspired me, and just being able to go out there and make a play like that, it was fun.
In case you missed it, Parker Washington had a 96-yard punt return touchdown on Sunday, which was the longest punt return in franchise history, and it was also the first special teams touchdown by any player in the history of NFL's London games abroad. And so, really cool moment for Parker Washington. Pretty cool quote too. Number 1 quote is not a video actually, but instead just screenshot from a story by Demetrius Harvey of the Florida Times Union. He had an exclusive interview with Jaguars owner Shad Khan about a week or two ago. So here's a quote talking about Brian Thomas Jr. Khan said, "I think he's a star, fastest guy in the NFL now. I love his attitude and the confidence he has. So it tells me that our draft process obviously has been very good and we've gotten great players. He's talented, but I also think he represents the city well." And so I think a lot of people saw this quote and got a little bit worried because they say, oh, Khan said that, or Khan complimented the draft process. Maybe he wants to keep Balky. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I just thought it was cool that the owner gave props to a player because you don't really hear that a ton, but I feel like especially in Jacksonville, Shad is more focused on management and coaching. And so maybe that's part of the reason he kind of diverted back to talking about the draft process. But either way, Shad Khan, happy customer. Yeah, that'll do it for our top 5 quotes. So it's time to check the comment section for chat therapy. Let me get this banner down. Reedy asked, how do you think Doug's job is looking at the moment? I think that it's still a similar situation that I've said in the past, where it's still a matter of when and not if Peterson is let go by the Jags. I think it's just going to take an ugly loss or a 2-game losing streak or something else later in the season. And so even though the Jags got the benefit of playing perhaps the worst team in the league last week in the Patriots, it's definitely not an easy season for the rest or an easy schedule for the rest of the season. And so I think he still will be out at some point, but it'll be interesting to see if, the Jaguars aren't eliminated from the playoffs yet. They technically control their own destiny, so they can win out. Maybe that would save Doug's job, but I think assuming they miss the playoffs, which is probably a fair assumption, then he's not going to be around next year. But I do think that the Jags actually match up really, really well with the Packers this week. Green Bay just had kind of a big emotional home win against a good Texans team last week, and they might be in a look-ahead spot because they play the division rival Lions, who are in first place in their division next week. Plus, the Packers they have a pretty horrible run defense. I want to look it up, actually, just how bad their run defense is. And so, hypothetically, Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne, if he returns from his hamstring injury next week, will be able to take that opportunity, because let me also look up what Joe Mixon did last week against Green Bay's front. Felt like every time I looked up, Joe Mixon was churning out 5 yards. He had 25 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Packers last week. And so far this season, let's see, the Packers are 7th best defense in rushing EPA per play allowed. And they're, where are they? The 21st best defense in terms of success rate allowed on the ground this season. And so they're pretty solid at preventing explosive runs is basically what that means. But you can really churn out 3 to 4 to 5 yards consistently against the Packers, especially, like I'm saying, as we saw from Joe Mixon last week. And so I think that, again, it's possibly a letdown spot for the Packers, possibly a really good spot for Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. And so if the Jags can just force 1 or 2 turnovers from the Packers offense, even though, I don't think the Jags are going to make the playoffs or anything like that and have like this huge turnaround. But I actually think that this matchup against Green Bay on Sunday does present nicely. But we'll get more into that on Thursday when we do a preview show with Mia O'Brien. Kari White, sorry, I don't know. Apologize if I butchered your first name, but she asked on YouTube, do you think anyone on the coaching staff will be retained after the season? I think like Ryan Nielsen has done a little bit better last week. I don't know. I think like unless Ryan Nielsen shows flashes, and to me it's less about Ryan Nielsen and more about his staff, because I think especially with Chris Richard running the secondary basically, and then they've got a few other good assistant coaches too. Maybe it'd be interesting to keep that defensive staff and just hire a new head coach / offensive play caller next year. But I don't know. That's a big maybe, a big if. I think it's definitely more likely that they clean out the entire coaching staff, and it's just a matter of whether they also do the front office or not too. Austin's, Boston's, and random vids asked, how do you think we match up against Green Bay? Any keys to this one? I assume you asked that comment as I was talking about it. But yeah, I think Jacksonville's run game matches up really well against Green Bay's run defense. And then, honestly, Green Bay's offense matches up really well against Jacksonville's defense, because I think Jordan Love is actually a lot better against his own defenses than man, and Jacksonville likes to run a lot of man defenses. But they do have, even though they don't have like an alpha receiver, they have a lot of stud receivers who I think can take advantage of the man coverage. And more than anything else, the Packers are one of the best play action teams in the NFL, and the Jaguars are one of the worst teams at defending play action. So I think Green Bay is going to be able to pick up a lot of chunks through the play action attack. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see if it'll be a kind of high scoring, interesting matchup. But if you're into betting, then I think that Jaguars first half spread would be an interesting bet, because I think, again, this matchup is pretty solid for them on paper, and it could be a letdown spot for the Packers. But I don't know. I do trust Mike LaFleur way, way, way more than Doug Peterson to finish games. But yeah, I like Jacksonville's chances of keeping it close, especially in the first half. Reedy said, I want to see how BTJ will go up against Jair Alexander. Yeah, that'll definitely be one of the premier matchups to watch. Obviously, we saw Brian Thomas Jr. go off last week, even being shadowed by Patriots top cornerback Christian Gonzalez, who has been shadowing opposing receivers all year and has been fairly successful. But I think it was arguably his worst game against Brian Thomas Jr. last week. And then it's not like it was even a bad game from Gonzalez, because like we saw in that 60-yard bomb to Brian Thomas Jr., Gonzalez was playing pretty solid defense, but Brian Thomas Jr. is just different. And so Jair Alexander has been one of the best cover corners in the NFL for years now. And so it'll definitely be a great matchup between him and Brian Thomas Jr. Chari or Kari, let me know how to pronounce your name. Comment below so I stop butchering it. But she asked, what teams could we potentially beat other than the Packers? Well, let's just go ahead and pull up the schedule. They've got the Packers. I'll call that a win. Should we do a little? Let's guess the rest of the season real quick. So they're what? 2-5 right now. Is that right? That seems right. I'm just gonna go with 2-5. So I'll say a win against the Packers, 3-5. A loss at the Eagles, 3-6. A loss against the Vikings, 3-7. A loss versus the Lions, 3-8. A loss versus the Texans, 3-9. A win at the Titans, 4-9. A win against the Jets, 5-9. A win at the Raiders, 6-9. A win against the Titans, 7-9. A win at the Colts, 8-9. So like they could maybe squeeze out like a 8-9 or maybe a 9-8 season. But it's funny that 9-8 is their ceiling after they went 9-8 in two completely different ways the past 2 years. And yeah, so I feel like 7 or 8 wins is probably going to be the max for the Jaguars, especially considering, again, their next several opponents starting this Sunday are the Packers, at the Eagles, versus the Vikings, and at the Lions, then versus the Texans. And so that's definitely a gauntlet. It's pronounced like Shari. Okay, thank you, Shari. Appreciate you joining. Appreciate everyone for joining and commenting. Had a lot of fun talking to Leon. It's really cool getting expertise for someone who's truly in the NFL. I mean, yeah, I stopped playing football my freshman year of high school because I was shaped like a twig. And so to really get a former player or a former coach like having Campo on before is pretty sweet. And I really enjoyed that. Hopefully you guys did too. So thanks again to Shari. Thanks again to everyone else. I'll see you guys here at 9:04 a.m. on Thursday as we break down more Packers versus Jaguars matchups with me, O'Brien. So until next time, thanks, guys. Where's my ad? Wait for the ad. Don't go away yet. Where is it? Okay, here we go.
The
Now you can go.
Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same day injury care, no ER lines.